Right, welcome and say good morning and a happy Easter celebration to all of you. Thank God for giving us this wonderful day and thank God for His grace and His mercy. Well, today I'll continue what we've been discussing in class, and today my concentration is on Unit 3, Section 5. Unit 3, Section 5. Now, the Section 5 talks about social change and the African family. Social change and then the African family. So we ask ourselves, what is social change? So we'll be looking at an explanation or definition of social change. And then we'll also look at the factors, right, that has in a way brought change to our African family system. That's what we'll be looking at. And of course, we'll end up maybe with how to answer questions, especially when it comes to section B of the end of semester. If a question from this area should come, what are the steps that you have to take? Remember, I always say that it is not the student who that passes his exam or her exams with A, but rather students who know the exam, what I term as exam techniques that they are those who mostly get the A's. So here I entreat you that as we read your book or as we listen to me, you can get your jotter and then jot certain things down, the important salient things down. And of course, as we do this exercise, you can ask questions because as I always say, the examiner is just like you and I, or the chief examiner is just like you and I. He also takes your textbook, read it, and after which he sits down, asks himself questions, try to formulate questions from what he has read, and then at the end of the day, he chooses some questions to examine you. So you can also, in your own way, sit down, read the whole test, write questions, and then make attempts by closing your book, and then answering it yourself the way you understand it. Yes, the way you understand it. And that is why at the end of the day, I'll give you steps that is required or expected of you, especially when it comes to the end of semester examination, the section B, the AC side. What are examiners looking for? So the steps, we'll talk about that at the end, the tail end of it. So now we start the ball rolling with the issue of what is social change. What is social change? Now, when we talk about social change, we are referring to the fundamental alterations or changes in the pattern of our culture, our social structure, and social behavior over a period of time. Please note, there are certain key important words that when you are defining a social change, these key important words should be there. Fundamental alterations or changes. That is one. The pattern of our culture, structure, that is our social structure. And the last one has to do with social behavior over a particular period of time. Particular period of time. So if you are defining social change, these words are very key. They are very key. Fundamental alterations or changes in the pattern of our culture, our structure, the social structure, our behavior within a specific period of time or within over a period of time. A period of time. And in our case, most often, or in the case of Africa in general, what has brought this change are mostly external factors. Of course, internal factors contribute, but those that have significantly contributed to alterations or changes in our social pattern, in our culture, in our social behavior, most of these are external factors. Most of these are external factors. Most of these are external factors. Now, let us look at some of these factors. We have the slave trade, we have colonialism, we have integration into global economy, we have Christianity, we have Islam, we have Western education, and also have post-independence. These are the external factors that has brought changes in our pattern of our culture, in our social structure, in our social behavior over a period of time. Over a period of time. If today we look at our culture values, even let's go back 20 years ago, we realize that our culture values has been influenced in a way by the Western world. By the Western world. Gone were the days when you meet an elder person carrying any good or luggage. You help him. But today, this is no more. It's gradually fading. Gone were the days you don't struggle with an elder person in the transport for transport. No, you don't struggle. You don't. No, 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 no. It is not part of our culture. But today, what do we see on campuses? Our little buses and whatsoever. You see the young man sitting down and an elder man standing. Why? The young man has paid and the elder man has also paid. So what is the difference? And now I have the seat. So I said, you the old man, stand. This clearly tells you that there is a change in our culture value system. Because a typical African culture value system, the young man, even if you are paid, first you are supposed to pay for the elder person. But if you don't have the money, that is it. That is not a problem. But you must vacate your seat for the elder person to sit. But how many young men today or women will do that today? It tells you that our culture values have changed. There has been an alteration. And this is what we are talking about. So let's look at the slave trade first point. Let's look at the slave trade. How the slave trade has brought a change in our social setup, in our family setup. Yes. Slave trade, how it has contributed in that way. Now, during the slave trade, a lot of our able-bodied men and women were captured and taken overseas to work as labor. Now, in order to avoid extinction of our family system, particularly more men were taken, and we had few men left and many women available. Now, in order to prevent extinction of the African race or races or communities that were affected, muchly affected by the slave trade, women have to give birth more children to more children. so that the community will not go extinct. They give more, they reproduce to fill the vacuum created because most of the men were taken away, were created. So the vacuum created had to be filled, or as a time will come, that community will be in extinct. So you see our mothers giving birth to 10 children, not because they wanted it, but because if they do not do that to replenish whatever has been lost, let me use the word replenish, what has been lost, the society is likely going to go extinct one day. Assuming there's another raid there, what will happen to the community? You all die. So if they produce more, and a time came, and there's another raid, at least some of the family members, some people will still be left. So the need for the women to produce more, 10 children, to, to refill the vacuum, to fill the vacuum that has been left. And that also created an opportunity, maybe a situation where the few men around had to marry more than one wife. And one of the means they can use to survive is to go into prostitution. So if that's the case, let a few men around marry more than one, bring them under their umbrella and take care of them. And those days it was agrarian farming community, peasant farmers, hand to mouth. So at least when you marry more women, they give more children, produce more children. You can have more labor on the farms. So it is not that our forefathers just decided that our mothers should give birth 10 children or whatsoever. There was a situation that necessitated that. That necessitated that. Additionally, with the evil men taken away, now the onus of taking care of the family now rested on the women to take care of their family. So in that case, more women became breadwinners in the community. They became breadwinners in the community. In the community. So you see, women have to share men. Women have to share men. That is, the few men around have to marry more of the women. They were compelled to. At least they will be under the care and protection of the man, and the man will take care of them, rather than allowing them to have their own way, where they will have to feed themselves, take care of themselves. And of course, we can't rule out the situation where some would go into prostitution. And in a way where the women took things for themselves, became breadwinners of their family members, particularly the aged, those who are then at the point in time think, well, we are old now, so even if I marry, I can produce. Let me stay with my children like that. Fine. They became breadwinners. And that situation made some women to become independent. Independent, since they could not enjoy any attention from any husband. So they became independent. So the slave trade actually altered our family system. Yes, greatly. Where, like I indicated earlier on, the few men around has to marry the other women who are around. Women have to give birth to 10 children and whatsoever, so that the society will not be extinct. And some women also became independent. So the slave trade, in a way, have changed our family system, affected our social pattern. The other issue we're looking at is colonialism. Colonialism was also an important factor that changed our social pattern. Yes, with colonialism, our colonial masters introduced cash system or cash economy, as well as introduced Western education to us. Our forefathers did not know anything about cash economy, but we had our own system of exchange, the barter trade. So the colonial masters came and introduced cash economy to us, printers of cash, the British pound to us, and taught us how to farm on commercial basis so that the leftover could be sold for income so that we can use the one to meet other demands. Per that, we were just farming. So if, for instance, I'm a cassava farmer and I need fish, I just take a bundle of cassava and go to a fishing community, put the cassava at the roadside, and whoever needs a cassava within the fishing community who needs a cassava will just go, pick my cassava, put his fish there, and I also go and take the fish. That's all. Exchange, barter trade. Exactly. But the colonial masters came and introduced cash economy to us. And that brought a change in our system, our culture, social, and behavioral pattern. Of course, they introduced Western education to us. They introduced Western education to us. And which, of course, today, that is what we are doing now, Western education. Now, and of course, one thing that we should note also is that the system in Europe was patriarchal. So when they also came here, that patriarchal tendencies was what introduced to our people. So politically, our colonial masters do not employ women. They employed only men because their system was patriarchal. They do not work with women. So when they came here, they didn't work with women. Of course, our society, of course, by then is also patriarchal. Of course, today, that patriarchalship is reducing because of the issue of right. So you can see now women are at man in certain positions today. Things are changing. But those days, women were not employed. It was men. That was why the saying that when you even educate a woman, she ends up in a man's kitchen. Because at that time, when you educate a woman or a girl child or a girl child, she will not get any employment. Nobody will employ her. So she ends up in the kitchen with her education. So what's the essence of spending millions of cities to educate her? And she ends up in the kitchen of someone. No need. That was why the girl child was not educated because of the patriarchal system of the society, which was re-emphasized or enforced with the coming of the Europeans to our system in our system. So we realized that men were trained as clerks to help in the colonial administration. Women were sidelined. Women could not take formal employment, especially in the civil services. Could not. It was the precept of only the men. We realized that women's status, in this case, diminished. No matter the level of education, there's no way. They employ the men. So not only the expatriates, even companies that were open also went that way. Those days, the companies that were open those days, established those days, also went that way to employ the men, leaving behind the women. And this situation made the women to become more dependent on their husbands since they do not have a regular income. And indeed, the women stayed in the government bungalows and they were housewives, martinez. just in the kitchen, taking care of their husbands and their family. Also, they didn't get the opportunity to do any petty trading or whatsoever because of the patriarchal nature of the society. Patriarchal nature of the society. But thank God, things seem to be changing gradually. Things, things seem to be changing gradually. Now, the other issue is the third point: the integration into the global economy. Yes, trade with Europeans, particularly Western European nations, integrated Africans into the expanding, excuse me, into the expanding, into the expanding global economy, expanding global economy. That's expanding global capitalist economy. Africans were involved in extraction of minerals and other natural resources, and the outcome of that extraction were exported outside European nations. And all these extractions were done by men, as I indicated earlier on. The Europeans worked with the men. So it was the men that did all this work. The women were sidelined. The men were taught the better ways of producing cash crops. They were the only people who worked in the plantations, the only people who worked in the mines, and whatsoever. And that was why, at a point in time, and even still today, some men migrate for greener pastures. Because to some extent, that patriarchal nature still exists in some part of Europe, where most of the employment or the employment companies also they prefer men than the women. Now, with the migration of men, women became less dependent and indeed managed domestic affairs. So, in a way, their status improved. Now, your husband has migrated outside to work. He sends the money. Of course, you take care of the family and, of course, yourself. Women were concerned with what? Production of food crops to feed their families. So, women became cash trapped. Yes, women, when it comes to their mind, their concentration those days was to provide. I mean, growing cash. I mean, growing fruits that they will. I mean, crops that will feed their family, not to sell, but rather what would keep their family alive. This was what the women were doing, and indeed, it as housewives, they were controlled by their husbands to some extent. So this idea of cash crops, with the coming of colonialism, it changed our family system. The other issue is Christianity. Christianity has also brought a social change in our African system. For instance, the new form of marriage, which is monogamous, was introduced by Christianity. In fact, the European missionaries had wanted our colonial masters to enact a law that indeed will make monogamy the ideal marriage system in Africa, or to the Ghanaians, for instance. The Ghanaians, in fact, history tells us by Smoke 1977 says that the missionaries petitioned the British government to introduce a pattern of binding monogamous marriage on inheritance right to wives. Inheritance right to wives. But they were not successful. The colonial masters knew the implications if they should enact such a law. in a constitution. So they did not. So because the colonial masters they did not, the missionaries did all things possible to have such a marriage system in the church. And the two steps, for instance, our people who had more than one wife and were church elders or whatsoever were made to divorce all and live with only one. If not, communion, you will not take communion. If not, certain key positions in the church, you wouldn't get it. You will not be given. So people who had key positions or who were anxious of having key positions in the church had no way but to divorce their extra wife and live with only one. Since communion is important in the Christian life, some have to divorce their wife so that they be able to take communion. Take communion. And additionally, the missionaries tried to abolish this institution of bride wealth, privity rights, and secondary marriages in our system because to them, these practices of ours are uncivilized. They want things to go their own way, be done in their own way. But our people opposed those stands of the missionaries. And seeing the responses from the African, some of the churches took a bold step to take a second look at things. For instance, the Catholic Church decided to make the payment of bride wealth a precondition for celebration of church marriage. A precondition for the celebration of church marriage. So if you are a Catholic and you don't pay the bride wealth, forget it. Marriage will not take place in the church. And indeed, when we look at today, in our system today, we see a remodification of some of these issues that were raised by the missionaries. And this in a way has affected our culture. Our wedding system today, our traditional marriage is seen as an engagement. It has lost its value. It is now subordinate to the Western wedding system. So even if you traditionally marry somebody, the church doesn't recognize it unless you go to do the wedding. A change in our system. And today, most ladies prefer monogamous marriage. The man is made for her, no any other woman. She can't share a man with any other woman. And it has come to stay. It has come to stay. Our marriage system has been affected. Of course, like I indicated in class, monogamous marriage is not the ideal marriage system in Africa. It's not. People go behind and do whatever they want to do, either secretly or publicly. So which is which? That is your guess or your answer is right. Additionally, another issue under this Christianity is now that when you marry, you take the name of your husband. Gone with the days, doesn't like that. You still maintain the name of your father. But today, if you are a Christian, the moment you marry, you take the name of your husband. A change in our system. Quite a number of issues fall under here, and that has affected our African family system. African family system. Another issue we are talking is Islam. Islam has also brought a change in our social structure. You know, the Quran is one thing that favors the equality of men and women. But you see, to some extent, the role of women have been subjugated so many for so many years in our Islamic communities or Muslim communities. Why? Because of a patriarchal system. If you go to certain Quranic verses or surahs, it talks about the equality of the man and the woman. In fact, in the pre-Islamic era, the Al-Jahiliyyah period, women were not considered. They were relegated far, far, far down beneath the ground. That certain acts were perpetrated against the girl child. There are cases or stories of where girl children who were born were killed because families prefer men than the women. The woman, of course, the girl child was like a waste or and something unwanted. But when Islam came, this trend changed. Islam came to preach against that system and to improve the status of Muslim women so that women in that Arabic jurisdiction should be accepted as worthy human beings and recognized as such. During the era of the early stage of Islam, women were given an identity for soul accountable to God. And indeed, women were rewarded according to their deeds. According to their deeds. For example, the Quran, Surah 4, 1, 2, 4, states that if anyone does deeds of righteousness, that person will enter into heaven, and not the least injustice will be done to him or her. So Islam, in this case, recognized the importance of the women. And the women, if they do good deeds, they should be rewarded. They should be what? Rewarded, as the Bible tells us. Islam also gives women the right to inherit or the right of inheritance, even if the inheritance is small. They should, gone are the days they did not have the right for any inheritance of their father's world or property. But when Islam came, it reversed this system that a girl child also has the right to inherit the father, regardless of the quantum of the inheritance. She also has the right to inherit. She also has the right to inherit and the right to own properties. To own properties. They have the right to education, and they're also entitled to rewards of paradise. So these were the things that the women during the pre-Jahiliyyah era were deprived of. So when Islam came, it brought some of these issues up and made Islam and the women in Islam to be apart with the men. But what do we see in our communities, Islamic communities? These Quranic passages or teachings are not strictly adhered to, partially because of our patriarchal system. So we realize that yes, Islam also came to bring a change in our social system. So in communities that have accepted Islam, and today Islam is ruling in that community in terms of inheritance or whatsoever, they go according to what the Quran says. And indeed, it has brought a change in our setup. If you look at the northern region or communities in Ghana where Islam dominates, you see a change there. You see a change there. Now, the other one I'll talk about is Western education. Western education. Western education went hand in hand with colonialism to such an extent that the people felt there was no difference between the missionaries and the colonists, our colonial masters. Western education, in a way, affected the position of women in our society. It gave the women the equal opportunity to enroll in the schools that were established by them, started by the missionaries. So the boy child and the girl child had the opportunity to both enroll in formal education. But however, both our colonial masters and the missionaries, because of their patriarchal system, thought those days that look, even if the girl child is given the opportunity to be educated, when it comes to the issue of employment, the girl child should be employed. Period. Patriarchal system. So men in the church were needed to serve as catechists and clerks. Men occupied all those positions those days in the church and in the civil service. So the women, they acquire the education and, like I indicated, end up in the kitchen. And in those days, although girls were given the opportunity, the curriculum of the men was different from that of the female. Why? Female, at the end of the day, she ends in the kitchen. Male will be employed to work. So there was that kind of biasness in the system, in the education system. And of course, our tradition said that reaffirms the stand, the patriarchal system of the Europeans, where traditionally the boy child is more recognized than the girl child. So in our tradition said that women are supposed to marry and reproduce so that the community will not go extinct. So women were therefore given up to marriages at an early age. Of course, there are reasons to that. At an early age, but we don't know exactly the exact age. But they were giving up because why educate her and she will end up in somebody's kitchen? Why educate her? She end up producing children for somebody. So the money you use for educating them, keep it and use it for the family. Patriarchal system. Patriarchal system. But gradually, with enlightenment, Some Ghanaians started making noise about the early system of marriage, which of course had an impact on our family system. Our family system. And today, the elite in the society have changed women's role. Civil servants, senior civil servants wanted their wives to dress and behave like the Victorian ladies. This meant that the women would not work. They were housewives and enjoy maintenance from their husbands. Yes. They were housewives and enjoy everything from their husband. But today, things have changed. Women don't want to be housewives. And of course, it's not important. It's not even needful to let your wife stay in the house when she can also work and help support the family. But one of the days, this idea was not there. So the education we acquired in a way, the women did not get the opportunity to work. They were not given the opportunity to work. And just changed our social setting. That's why today, if you look at the established companies, the whole nation, men men outweigh the women. The women are in a minority. Then the last issue I'll talk about the post-independence era, you can look at it for yourself. Then the last thing is the changing patterns of marriage. There's diminishing importance of the collective group. Families do not often support their members to pay bride well. Yes. Marriageable men pay it when they can afford. Yes. The whole family system has broken down. Individualism has set in that today it is I and my family, nothing else. To support my cousin and whatsoever is a problem because of many reasons. We have become so individualistic today. Courtship has become more common and often takes more time than it used to be in the past. There are some people who are into courtship for 2 years and 3 years and whatsoever. Not married, still and whatsoever. Not married. And they're still in courtship. And not only the courtship, they do things they are not supposed to do, like for instance, excuse me, like sex. Sex. No things are going on. And of course, the third one is the bride well is becoming exorbitant. They'll give a very tall list if you want to marry today. And because of that, today most men are not able to marry. Some among the list you have to provide laptop, others key, brand new car key. Are you selling your daughter? Now, if the man should use to fulfill all this long list, does your daughter have a future with him? So sometimes I see people who marry and they end up in debt. They spend a lot in the marriage, meeting the long list, and then a big wedding reception and whatsoever. And at the end of the day, what to survive on becomes a problem. They survive on the benevolence of friends. Please, let's take a second look at this. It's rather to make the list short and I mean the reception very simple or moderate, and use whatever money you have to start a family. Get a land of your own and start building, rather than spending millions of cities and go and rent an apartment. And what to eat becomes a problem. Polygyny is giving off to monogamy. Yes, I indicated that. But however, concubinage has become common. Yes, I have this. So you marry with only one, you are staying with one wife. But a lot of men today have side chicks. No one, not two side chicks. Some are having two or more than three. And that is the system today. That's the understand today. Right. So these are some of the issues. Now, one thing you should note is this: if a question should come from like the end of semester I indicated, normally essay sections, what you need to do is every essay has a three stages. The introduction is there, the body is there, the conclusion is there. Now, the introduction should capture what is known as the good thesis statement, where concepts should be defined. So, a question about factors that has led to social change in the Ghanaian community. Of course, you must first define what social change is and explain or give an example of it. And once you do that, then you also now mention some of the points or factors of the social change in the introduction. For instance, some of the factors that have contributed to this social change are the slave trade, Christianity, Islam, colonialism, Western education, and integration into global economy. However, the first five or the first four, depending on the requirement of the question, will be discussed or examined. Also, when you do that, if you started with slave trade, then you talk about what does the slave trade mean? How has it caused a change in our social family system? Then you talk about it, then you give illustrations or examples because marks are awarded for examples. So you mentioned maybe the first point is slave trade. Please do not itemize it. Your introduction should not be itemized like one, slave trade, I, education, Western education, I, Islam, IV, Christianity. No, it should be in the sentence form. At this level, if you just itemize them, examiners mark and say sin because this is not expected at this level of yours. So when you do, then you do the same thing to the other points. Now, take note of this. Examiners are interested, the chief examiner is interested particularly in the conclusion, where student factors that have caused the social change in our system. Your personal assessment of those factors. It's no more the chief examiner is no more looking for conclusion summary. We're gone with the days after your body after writing your body, then you summarize it. No, now chief examiners are not looking for that. You have to give your personal opinion. If you summarize, I bet you examiners will just mark and say sing and conclude. So remember, your personal opinion at the conclusion matters. And also remember that the body, as you write the body, bring illustration or examples where and when needed, because marks are given for illustrations or examples given. And the introduction, remember to define concept. For instance, what is social change? Define what social change is. Define what the African family system is. African family is. Then you come to the factors that has contributed to the social change. Mention all the factors: slave trade, Christianity, Islam, Western education, integration to the international economy, global economy. I mean, mention them. Then per how you are mentioning them or itemize them, you take it one after the other and you explain after the other. You give example, you move to the next, you explain, give example, and you draw your conclusion with your own opinion. And once you follow this system, you don't have any problem again. Once again, I thank you for coming. I mean, live, and indeed, I will come to the. I'll come once again. I'll come again. I will be unit 3 and section 5 again at the appropriate time. Until then, I say shalom. Uh, I'll go to come to the that's the section. Now we are left with the section 6. Yes, so that one will be dealt with later on. We'll come back again. Amen. Have a nice day and a lovely